Steve, who just presented, gave me a great idea, which is to let you know there is a Kubernetes meetup group in San Diego. And I don't have the information on any of my slides, but ask me if you are interested. It's San Diego Kubernetes Meetup, and it's on meetup.com. I'm also going to be looking at my computer occasionally for my speaker notes, if I need to. So we are here to talk about Kubernetes, and we are here to talk about developers being interested in Kubernetes. And before we start, I wanted to ask, who here has Kubernetes in production? Okay, cool. Not that many. Who here would consider potentially, maybe, if everything lined up, using Kubernetes in production in the near future? This is just as I expected. So few people, very few people, I think 3, using Kubernetes in production right now, and most of you, by far, are interested. I find it a lot easier to talk about Kubernetes when I talk about it in the context of cloud native. So on one hand, it's easier for me, but on the other hand, what the heck is cloud native? We know cloud, right? We've been doing cloud for a while, but cloud native? Yeah, I heard about cloud native, but until I joined Heptio a few months ago was when I really stopped to understand, okay, what is this? Because I don't know. So when I read and I hear people talk about cloud native, I hear them saying it's an approach. It's a pattern that emerges. It's a strategy. It's a design. So still, what is it? What does it mean? This is not a talk that's going to teach you how to do anything. I hope this will be a talk that will give you keywords to look up later if you get inspired. So cloud native is something that is intentional, right? We're talking about architecture of our servers, of our apps. And when we talk about cloud native, what comes to mind to me is that whatever it is, it's very intentional. And everything we do is intentional. So what am I talking about? What I'm talking about is that I have a sense that when we talk about cloud native, when we do want to implement a cloud native strategy, we have to look at things as a whole. It's you have to consider everything in relationship to each other, and as opposed to doing things one off here and separate and afterwards thinking about how to glue everything together. So this is something to think about. Really have to look at everything ahead of time. But we're here to talk about developers. I'm a developer, so that makes me super excited. And we can imagine Kubernetes as being a tool that is useful for operators and for systems administrators and DevOps, right? But developers? Why would developers be looking into Kubernetes? I mean, unless they have to, unless they walk into a company and they're using Kubernetes, they have to, maybe. But otherwise, why would they be interested? If you know the psychology behind, I'm going to say the genetic developer, right? I'm going to generalize here now, so forgive me, but I can't resist. Developers, they want to do more. They want to do more, and they want to do more in an easier way, right? Developers are lazy. Okay, the secret is out. I'm a developer, I'm lazy. I don't want to do things the hard way. I want to do things, but I want it to be easy. And I want to be productive, and that gives me happiness in my job. So when we talk about Kubernetes and when we start looking about what Kubernetes does, and I'm a developer, I start thinking, that sounds like what I do once in a while, but easier. So let's walk through some of these things. These are some characteristics of Kubernetes, what Kubernetes brings to the table during the development process that could really make me happy. Immutable infrastructure. So some of these terms are going to be obscure. Some of these terms you more than know. Don't want to make a lot of assumptions either way. So I'm going to touch on them slightly and not go super deep. So immutable structure, what I'm thinking is, for example, dependencies, right? I'm developing something on my machine. I throw it over the wall for the systems admin people, and they deal with it, they deploy it, great. And then there is a dependency issue because the version of dependency I have on my machine is not even the version, that same thing is on the server, or maybe it's not even installed, or the programming language version on that machine doesn't match the one I use, and I use the brand new feature of that language, and it doesn't exist on the server. So, okay, they have to deal with it, I have to deal with it. It's a hassle. With Kubernetes, I deploy something, let's say on my machine, and it's immutable. Whatever version I specify that for my dependencies that will be used in that architecture, in that environment, once that goes to another machine, it will be exactly the same. I can have different versions of it, but it will be of the infrastructure as a whole. Declarative configuration. This is sort of a new thing, but not really. But it's, I think it's not a very common way to do deployments. So I'm going to touch on it a little bit. So declarative configurations, actually Steve, when he was describing CloudFormation, Amazon's CloudFormation, he touched on this a little bit. CloudFormation is really, really cool. It can do a ton of things, and it can do it very easily. So just not to confuse anyone, CloudFormation is something you use to boot up a cluster of instances, right? Kubernetes is just like what you're going to put inside those instances. So completely different things, but related. But the declarative way to boot up a CloudFormation cluster is the same as the declarative way to boot up a Kubernetes thing. Basically, you write the instructions for what you want. You declare it. It's what you want. You don't have to worry about how that's going to be done. You declare it in the Kubernetes way. You run it. You have to have your clusters. So you run it. You point it at a cluster. Okay, Kubernetes is going to take care of the how. So as a developer, I'm like, really? I don't have to write my own personal scripts for deploying things? I mean, really, if you have ever been a developer, or if you are a developer, a developer walks into a new job and says, oh, cool, you deploy your apps this way. It's really cool because that's exactly the same thing, the same way that I used to develop. I used to deploy my apps in my last job, said no developer ever. Yeah, so every new job you need to learn how to deploy, and maybe different apps in the same place of work has a different deploy strategy. And I have been working with infrastructure development in the past years, but before that, I used to be just an app developer and not deal at all with infrastructure. And I used to hate doing deployments because it's complex, and it's in relationship to everything that I did, which was just coding. It was a one-off thing that I had to write a bunch of notes around it for me to, because I could never remember. Nobody's supposed to remember, but I didn't do it all the time, and when I did it was just a major pain. So I hated doing it, and when there were system admins and DevOps people, I tell you, I never loved any group in a company, even more than my own peers, as much as DevOps people, because, here we go. Deal with it for me. I don't want to deal with these one-off things. Anyway, back on track. self-healing. I deploy my app easily, right, to a staging environment, a testing environment, a canary environment, and so let's say the QA team is testing it, something goes down. I have told that that infrastructure that I want a certain number of nodes, and if one goes down, please bring one up. Just replace it with a new healthy one. So something goes down for some reason, I don't have to worry about it. Kubernetes will take care of bringing that another node up. And let's say I have one node, one app, another node, one app, and that makes up a whole service. So I don't have to deal with it. Kubernetes will deal with it for me. And the beauty of that is that it's a machine, right? It's a program. It's on top of it 24/7, and it's much more efficient in doing that than a human would be. It's standardized. So now I think we can start seeing a pattern here. Is one way of doing things. There's a Kubernetes API. Kubernetes has this concept of resources, and you can actually extend it as well. But you work with these resources, and it's the same with every Kubernetes architecture that you work with. So you are dealing with an API that, okay, the API is changing because Kubernetes is major, massive development, and things are changing. But the concept of it doesn't change. So you will eventually be doing this naturally. Even if it's a one-off thing, it just becomes a lot more natural. Starts to feel natural and not overwhelming. Location of the deploy target. My system admin set up a cluster for me on Amazon or on Google Cloud Platform or on Azure. Do I care? No, I don't care. I have the credentials on my computer, and so my computer has access, and I point my deployment to a cluster. I don't care where that cluster is. The things that I'm going to do is going to be the same no matter what cloud provider is hosting my instances. And of course, we have the ability to also do on-prem, but on-prem, there's a lot of work that will have to go behind it, but once things are there, same idea. I really, as a developer, I don't care where my deploy target is. And Kubernetes makes it easier for separate services to talk to each other. So if you have a microservice infrastructure and you have to deploy them and they have to talk to each other, you don't have to go, configure this server here and configure this server here and make sure one knows about the other and all that. Kubernetes will do that for you and give you a name. So now you know this thing has a name, this thing has a name, and when they have to talk to each other, just call the name. Did that node go down and was brought up with a different IP? I don't care, because I have a name. Kubernetes is going to map that name to whatever IP comes back up. So I just don't think so many things I don't have to worry about. As a developer, I'm like, wow, this is really cool. So really what we can think about is that Kubernetes provides this one single, consistent, repeatable way to do things, right? And which just naturally lends itself to automation. Is basically a distributed system in a box. A distributed system is very complex. There are a lot of concepts behind it. You guys know, you all know. But the thing is, at a basic level, Kubernetes provides that in a very efficient manner for you. You don't have to worry about it. Of course, if you have to optimize parts of your system, yes, you do have to have more knowledge specifically about whatever parts you want to optimize. But other than that, it's like, okay, I got my services, I got my logging, I can monitor this. That's pretty neat. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I don't have to learn a different tool. I just work with what I'm given, and what I'm given is pretty good. It's an architecture built for scale and resilience. And these are attributes that are important for no matter what size company you have. Now, I'm saying, well, you know, those one-off deployments that were so painful, now they sort of even like, I want to do it, right? So I can do this, bring it on. But if you are a CTO, you're thinking, wow, that's gonna wreak havoc with my systems admins, right? Because why would they not be thinking that they're not needed anymore? Maybe you're thinking that, well, I can save me some money. I just have, you know, money, like cut down my systems admin people and keep my developers and they can do extra. However, I have never worked as a systems admin or DevOps. I have always been a developer, but I did my research and just because I wanted to make sure I got this right. So when you're a systems admin, a lot of the work you do is repetitive, but like manual and like set up a server. Oh my God, I have to install this, I have to install that. And yes, we have scripts and I have scripts too. And I love my scripts and they like my little pets. And every once in a while I go there and I groom them. And I make sure, you know, I want to make sure they're nice and shiny still. And then after I groom them, got my script trial, I leave them alone, and like, I don't want to ever deal with the script again. But yeah, we have script, the system admins have scripts, and they have a lot of ways to optimize their work. But it's a lot of things that are repetitive, and in today's scenario, it's unneeded, it's unnecessary. So what would they do if they didn't do that? All these things up here are complex. None of them is solved in a way that, oh, monitoring, no big deal. I just press a button. I got monitoring. No, these things are hard. People are building systems to solve these problems because it's complicated. So if your systems admin is not doing the same process of configuring a machine every time you need one up, to bring one up, they're going to be working on this. This is going to bring you a lot more value than those repetitive tasks on the keyboard. You know, that's how you extract more values from your systems admins. And they are probably going to be happier too. Backup strategy. What is that? Who has a backup strategy here with whatever you have? That wasn't even 50%. All right, so work on that. Improving CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous delivery. Hard problem. Can always improve on that. You know, you can do it, but what happens if something fails? How do you handle that? That's the tricky part. And automating and scaling things. Always be automating, right? That's what your system admins can do if they're not doing repetitive stuff. Okay, so is Kubernetes good for my business? Okay, my developers will be happy, my systems admin will be happy, but show me the money, right? Well, it's impossible for me to answer that question for you. And what I propose for you is for you to think about. So these are really serious things to think about, except the last one, which is very cheeky. Cost of change. Every time you change something, there will be a cost with it. There will be a risk of that change that you have to deal with. Now, flipping that around, what's the cost of not changing, right? Are competitors availing themselves of the free open source Kubernetes, and you're not? Because, and then if you do go that route, you're not even ahead of them, right? I mean, at some point, IT just becomes commodity, and then you have to think about, okay, so if I go through the cost, if I go through the risk, am I going to be able to derive benefits from having that infrastructure? Because what that infrastructure is going to bring for you is speed, scale, and size. And I'm so proud of myself. You all, you have no idea, because I came up with this. as 3 S's. You can quote me. I did it on my own. I'm like, yeah, speed, scale, and size, right? Speed, if you're a small company, what do you want? Do you want to haggle with the deployment things and servers? No, you want to like iterate through features really, really fast. Get validation, keep going. If you're a medium-sized company and you're growing, because if you're not growing, don't bother, right? I don't know, figure out why you're not growing. But if you're growing, you want to scale, and you want to scale quickly and reliably. And if you're a bigger company, I mean, any company is going to have all of this. It's just why you're going to prioritize. Because you shouldn't be prioritizing everything equally, right? All of these 3 items. So if you're a bigger company, you probably are not going to want to move very fast, right? You've got it down. You validated your market. Scaling, you're probably doing that right. But you do want to save on compute costs, right? You don't want to size up a bunch of machines and just use 20% of them. Because when you're really, really big, guess what? If you can save on 1%, that's a lot of money. So how do I get this magic? And I'm going to have to speed up a little. You have a monolith? It's okay. You can do it. Stuff it in a container. Use Kubernetes to deploy it. However, it's going to be painful. The bigger your container image is, it's going to give you, if you have a small monolith, fine, but the bigger it gets, the more pain you're going to feel. So then you have to start thinking microservices. Split up that database into a service, your app into another service. But I'm not going to talk about it because there's so much out there in the way of how do you do microservices. CI/CD, make sure you have that. DevOps culture. Yes, you must have that. Those teams must be talking and they must be really tuned into each other. 12-factor app, not going to go into this, but 12-factor app. Look up what this is, and this is a really good guideline for how you can get yourself there. So, developers, right? Hey, greater sense of ownership through the life cycle of the app that I'm making. More self-sufficiency. And those one-off deployments, they don't seem so painful, like when it's done this way. And when I'm doing what the operations teams usually do for me, and I'm doing that, I start having more of a sense of empathy for that team as well, which, as a CTO, you should think of it as a good thing.
Okay, thank you very much, Carlisia.